scholars, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be discussing Zoro versus King, their fight in Wano. It was an amazing fight. I actually got to watch it in the anime recently. The animation was beautiful, okay, like absolutely gorgeous how they animated that fight. It was so epic. It was so epic. It captured the epicness from the manga and enhanced it in the anime. I loved it. I love this fight. Now, this fight, while it is not on the same level of symbolism as Sanji versus Queen, there is still quite a bit of symbolism in this fight with Zoro and King. From King being called King, even though his real name is something else, him being called King, and then Zoro becoming this personification of a king with Enma to fight against him. There's that symbolism there. There's both of their symbolism of what they stand for, being the vice captains of their crew, being the right hand man of the captain of which they serve. I mean, there's a lot of really tit for tat here between these two characters. They have a lot of similarities. They have a lot of similar goals and beliefs and what they're fighting for. Their differences lie, one, of course, in their backgrounds, in their stories of growing up, what they face, and in the fact that Kaido's dream, while wanting to be king of the pirates, is very different than Luffy's desire to be king of the pirates because of the way they strive to achieve their goals, and that makes their right-hand men strive to want to make them king of the pirates for two very different reasons. And I really like to see them kind of clash with each other in this fight to see kind of which ideology is going to stand up at the end. It's wonderful. And of course you have the tie-in with King thinking Kaido is Joy Boy, and then Kaido of course saying, no, I'm not him, Joy Boy will be the one to defeat me. And then Zoro, being the loyal person that he is, Zoro's loyalty getting to shine as he gets to kind of pave a way, like carve a path for Luffy in a sense. So in a sense that he is taken out, much like Sanji does, he takes out one of the lead performers, and he takes out the vice captain, the right hand man of Kaido, leaving Kaido after this point by himself. As one of the top people, he's by himself. So Zoro in a sense gets to carve this way, symbolically carving a way for Joy Boy to return to take on Kaido. It's really neat. I've really enjoyed this fight. I liked rereading it, and there's a lot with Zoro in particular, with his loyalty and his promises to Luffy, that I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into it, because I'm really excited to talk about this fight. So Zoro, and side note, I don't talk about Zoro enough. I do really love Zoro's character. I don't talk about him enough. He has really good moments in the series, and I think because he's such a more of a subtle character, his moments are more subtle, you know, like nothing happened. There's a lot of very subtle moments for Zoro that happen, and you have these big fights with him that are epic. And I don't often talk about them as much as I should probably talk about them, because I have other moments that I like to focus on. But I love Zoro as a character. I love his loyalty, his determination, and his motivations. And I love the fact that his respect for his swords come into such a big play in this fight. Because as the fight starts, you have Zoro and King going at it, and Zoro ends up kind of cutting off a portion of King's mask. King is very sensitive towards his mask because he doesn't want people to see his face. So he kind of throws a tantrum in a sense. I know that's a very childish way to say it, but that's essentially what he does. He goes berserk and sends Zoro flying into Frankie, and Frankie's like, hey, do you need help? And Zoro's just like, no, I got this. I knew he was gonna be strong. Of course he is. You take care of what you need to. I've got this. I'll take care of this. Frankie, of course, is like, you got this. You know, you got it, bud. I'll leave you to it. And as Zoro is attacking, he's landed hits on King, but not all of them are effective. He's landed one that has cut some of King's mask, but other than that, a lot of his hits, a lot of his slashes with his swords are not doing much damage to King. And for a good portion of this fight, Zoro is just kind of on the defensive side while still, you know, being very aggressive with his attacks. He's still more defensive, trying to figure out what King's power is, how King's body works, how he was able to harm him one time but can't harm him another time. And so Zoro spends a good portion of this fight using that battle IQ to figure out the trick to King, to figure out what King's weakness is. And Zoro does have a very good battle IQ. We see it quite often. And I like how he uses it in this fight. He's just constantly thinking and thinking about what he can do to beat King, how he was able to slash King, what he can do in order to figure out these weaknesses. And he's just always thinking, and I love to see it because he is taking heavy hits. He is taking major damage throughout this fight, and yet it never crosses his mind of, oh, I can't take another hit like this. It's oh, I'm glad I used my Armament Hockey or else I would have died, but we're still going to figure this out. What was different about that attack? It's his mindset that makes seeing his process, like his mental process of going through King's attacks and how he's being attacked, and makes it really cool to see because his mindset isn't a, oh, I don't need to get hit again. It's a, okay, so I did this, still got hurt, but what was different? And there's a lot of back and forth in this fight, and they eventually end up outside, and they're on like the outer parts of Onigashima as it is flying, and Enma starts acting up. I do think it's interesting, and I know it's because Enma was Odin's sword, and Odin had this connection with Hiyori, obviously, like that was his daughter. She would always play a certain song to him on the shamisen, and when she's in the castle playing that song on the shamisen in front of Orochi, Enma starts reacting to it, and Zoro can hear it. Zoro, even though they're like so far away from each other, he can hear Hiyori playing, and Enma starts reacting to that, which is really interesting to me. I don't know exactly what the connection is there, but it is said, like, you know, swords choose their own master, swords choose their wielder, and so swords, much like a lot of other things in the One Piece world, like Zoan fruits, have a mind of their own, have a will of their own. I'm sorry, I'm in full-blown theory mode right now, so I apologize. I'm trying not to theorize too much. That's for a video I'm filming after this. So I'm trying to hone it in a little bit, but it is curious that swords kind of seem, especially the stronger swords, the more capable swords that are called cursed, but they're not. These cursed swords have a will of their own in a sense, so seeing Enma respond to something, this sword, I'm gonna say he, I guess, to something he had heard so many years ago when he was in the care of Odin, is really interesting to see that connection, and it makes Zoro kind of step back to think about what kind of person Odin must have been, because Odin was able to handle Enma without blinking an eye. Like, the effects that Enma has on Zoro were not had on Odin, and so Zoro has this respect for Odin as a wielder of a sword, as a swordsman, and it motivates him to get better so he can stand on the level of Odin, which, and I wish, it just makes me wish we got more of Odin, because could Odin have beaten Mihawk? I'm just curious because Odin, as this incredibly strong wielder of swords, and he's a brilliant swordsman, he's been the only one to give a fatal blow to Kaido up to this point. And Zoro is taking that as inspiration. And if Oda's as strong as I think he is, he probably could have beat Mihawk, is what I'm assuming. I know age and whatever. I'm not talking about that. But the fact that Zoro in this moment, looking at Enma, he's thinking, what an incredible swordsman Odin must have been. It's such a small, tiny like shift in perspective. And I know Zoro is still wanting to be the greatest swordsman in the world. Of course he is. He's not giving up on that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just really like that the perspective here wasn't automatically, well, if I can master this sword, I can be the greatest. It was a, how great Odin must have been to wield this with no consequence. And I think that really lights a fire under Zoro, and more of a respect for the sword he is wielding too, not just Odin, but for Enma as well, of the magnitude of this sword that has come into his possession, that has chosen him. I love to see it. And I love that this connection with the swords and the respect he has for it goes even further as King is trying to separate Zoro from his swords, and Zoro is risking his own life, risking falling to his death just to grab his swords. And he grabs the Kitetsu third, and we get this this flash of when he got it back in Logtown, when they were saying it was a cursed sword, and Zoro tested his luck and it didn't cut his arm, and he was just like, yes, I'll take it. And it kind of showed the sword chose him in that moment as well. And so he has the same respect for the sword. And then we get another one with the Wado Ichimonji, with Kuina after her death and everything, and him wanting that sword, and the master giving it to him willingly. And then, of course, with Enma. And Enma, we get this very elaborate backstory with the samurai blacksmith that fled Wano and went to the East Blue. His name, I have to look at his name so I could say it right. Shimotsuki Kozaburo. This swordsmith that he met when he was a child, and this swordsmith was actually the one who kind of taught him to have this respect for the swords he wields. And he ended up telling Zoro about the most dangerous weapon he had ever crafted. He said it was the greatest weapon I ever made, and its disposition was deadly serious. And the sword's name, he gave it the name King of the Underworld, Enma. And as Zoro is sitting there, and Enma, from the way I saw it, it's like Enma came to him after Zoro was down and he had went to his other swords. Enma came to him and landed in front of him, is what it looks like both in the anime and the manga, signifying just how much Enma has chosen Zoro to be his wielder. And we find out more on Kozaburo. The village that Zoro was in was called Shimotsuki. It was named after him. And Zoro was just thinking this entire time, like, it's not a coincidence. Nothing of this was coincidental. It was not by accident that I met this person, that this person was named this. Especially knowing that Zoro, there's like a 98% chance that Zoro's family was originally from Wano, and his family possibly broke the taboo or gave Zoro to someone like Shimotsuki to take him away from Wano because they were insurrectionists. They were going against Orochi and Kaido, and they didn't want their son to be a part of that, so they sent their son away. I mean, there's a couple of things that could have definitely happened with Zoro and the timing of everything. And for him to have been raised in this village that was named after a swordsmith from Wano, and this swordsmith happened to teach Zoro everything he knows about respecting a sword and what a sword really means, the depth of crafting swords, the depth of what these blades are. It's very interesting, and it's like Zoro was saying, like, it's not a coincidence that any of this happened. Because Shimotsuki was saying, a great blade can see into you. It chooses only the swordman who best suits it. And that's when Zoro's like, oh, okay, I get it. What is interesting about Shimotsuki as well is that he was also Kuina's grandfather, which is another very interesting connection there because of Kuina's father, him running the dojo, and Kuina being part of that dojo. And then afterwards, after Kuina's death, Zoro kind of filling that role before going off in his own journey. It is very interesting to see like all the interconnections between Wano and Zoro. It's super fascinating to me, and I think it plays very well into his fight with King, because Zoro is finally things are making sense to him, and it's clicking together about the person that he knew when he was a child, who taught him how to respect swords, who taught him how swords choose their wielder. And then it just kind of goes on and on and on up to this point. He's like, I get it now. And he's able to wield Enma. And then he immediately starts thinking, okay, how do I stabilize my haki to work better with Enma? To make them work together. It's not a, hey, you listen to me, or Enma taking everything from Zoro. It's, how do we stabilize this to work together? So good. And just as Enma is king of the underworld, he stands up with his haki. Like, his haki is just going absolutely bonkers right now, because that's how he's able to stabilize his power to fight with Enma for the time being. And he's knocking all of these people out, and King comes up to him and he says, oh, so you intend to be a king then? And Zoro's response, I love it so much. And he's thinking about Luffy, the promise he made to Luffy. And he says, that's right, I've got a promise to keep to my captain and my best friend. On one hand, captain is Luffy, best friend is Kuina. That is a very common way to look at it. But I also think it's kind of a double-sided thing. Luffy is absolutely Zoro's best friend too. Like, he is Zoro's best friend now. He is not just captain, he is best friend. He's both. I think that is a double meaning for Zoro, saying my captain and my best friend, both as an homage to Kuina and to Luffy, both of them at the same time. That's just how I take it, and I really like that. I love it so much. Zoro in possession of Enma, and they're working together. The fight heats up so fast, and it's nuts. They're going absolutely bonkers with each other. Like, they are fighting, going like blow for blow, hit for hit. Zoro has finally figured out how King's power works. When the fire goes out, that means his defense has fallen, so Zoro can attack more freely. And he lands this massive hit on King and ends up slicing off his mask. And then we get the whole King face reveal for him to be way too pretty. And we also figure out that King is a Lunarian, which is a huge part of King's backstory with Kaido, and why King is so loyal to Kaido. Because, and take a moment to talk about King now, because King was used as an experiment. He was used because of his race, which I know why now, with the whole Seraphim concept going into Egghead. Lunarians were not only just pretty much wiped out of existence, the ones remaining, from what we know with King, were used as test subjects, as experiments, and Kaido was the one to free King from that. Kaido was the one to save King from it. And as he's doing that, King is asking him if Kaido can change the world that they live in, and Kaido responds saying, I'm the only one who can. I mean, of course King's gonna be loyal to him after that. They break out together. Kaido appoints King right then and there as his right-hand man. Just, it's so similar to Luffy and Zoro when Zoro is trapped, of course, for two very, very different reasons. But when Zoro is tied to a pole, waiting his death pretty much, and Luffy comes up to him and just says, hey, are you really gonna let yourself go like this? Is this how you're gonna do it? Don't you have a dream? And inspires Zoro to pretty much say, okay, fine, I'll follow you. And then they break out right then and there and go on their way. And from that moment on, Zoro is vice captain. He's Luffy's right-hand man. The similarities between them, like, yes, their stories are very different, but oh my goodness, the similarities are uncanny. So uncanny. And I love it because it's intentional. I love you, Oda. You do this so beautifully and brilliantly. It's so good. And then, of course, yes, King. King is loyal to Kaido from that moment forward. I'm skipping forward a little bit, but after Zoro defeats King, King is thinking more of his conversations with Kaido and this faith he has in Kaido. Kaido laughing at the idea that King thinks he's Joy Boy, and King being like, legends are legends, regardless, my life belongs to you. And it's just so interesting. King's loyalty to Kaido is such a direct parallel to Zoro's loyalty to Luffy, and to see these two right-hand men of their respective pirate captains who have the same amount of loyalty and respect for said captain fighting and duking it out is it's so good. It's so good. I love it. Before I finish with the symbolism, I want to finish up talking about the fight itself, because the fight itself is fantastic. It looked amazing in the manga. It was beautifully drawn. It was super epic. I love all the different moves that they pull off, and then the anime just went absolutely ballistic with it in the most fantastic way possible. I absolutely loved how they portrayed this fight in the anime. After Zoro figured out how King's body worked, King still felt confident, but he was shaken, he was scared, and Zoro could feel it because King was blocking more of Zoro's attacks, and Zoro says, why bother to block my attacks? I thought they did nothing to you, unless you're scared of what I can do. The trash talk was real in this fight, and I love it so much. It was so good. And King saying like, well, you're biologically incapable of beating me, putting so much faith in his Lunarian blood that Zoro is just like, I don't care who you are. I don't want to make excuses like that. Nothing like that matters to me, because King, what is interesting, King is so hung up on being Lunarian because of the persecution he faced, and Zoro's like the complete opposite. He doesn't care. He doesn't care that King is a Lunarian. He doesn't know about the rarity of Lunarians or, you know, anything like that. He just hears about it during the fight. But Zoro just doesn't care about that. He even says, so he's definitely from a special kind of race, but it's got nothing to do with me. And they're about to unleash these like epic ultimate moves on each other, and King again is showing his loyalty to Kaido, saying, don't get ahead of yourself, Kaido will be king of the pirates. And Zoro is just like, no. And I love it because Zoro doesn't explicitly say no, Luffy will, but he shows it through his actions. And I think that's even better because he doesn't have to say it, because he's proclaimed it so many times and he has faith in Luffy, so he doesn't have to sit here and argue with King about the fact that he believes Luffy's going to be the one to be king of the pirates. Instead, he shows his faith and his loyalty by going at King with everything he got and beating him. And those last moves were just, I mean, there's no other word to say but like epic. It was mind-blowing. The strength, the power, the determination, the desperation from both of these men going toe-to-toe, and then finally Zoro winning out at the end and becoming this king of the underworld. for Luffy's sake. And giving, even as King is falling and King has lost one of his wings, even as King is falling, this panel right here where he sends an extra blow, and that this panel is just insanely epic. I love this panel so much. And it says the winner is Zoro. Zoro has won. But what is so fascinating in these final moments as King is falling and he's lost, and Zoro is coming back to deliver the final blow and he's won. They're both thinking of the promise they made to their captain. This is where the symbolism between the two of them really shines the brightest. This is when it hits the hardest, because they both want to make their captains king of the pirates. They have both promised and both said that they are not going to lose. And they both put their lives on the line for their captain and believe in what they will create. King believes in what Kaido will create, the world Kaido will create. And Zoro believes in the world Luffy will create. And to see these two ideologies clashing with each other, not just between captain and captain with Kaido and Luffy, but with vice captains, it's just something special. It really, really is. And I love this for Zoro specifically because we have always known Zoro to be ride or die for Luffy. He's always been loyal to Luffy. But what I think is so cool about this fight is Zoro is constantly thinking about the promise he made after his loss to Mihawk. Because that's when, in my opinion, this is where Zoro's loyalty to Luffy and his belief in Luffy and his desire to really become the greatest really came to life. It really manifested in the moment he lost to Mihawk, in the moment he made his promise to Luffy. That's when the loyalty became unmatched. That's when Zoro fully believed in everything that Luffy would do, in the world that Luffy would create. That's when Zoro truly devoted himself to Luffy and to his dream. I know Zoro has always been after his dream. That's what we see when we first meet him in the East Blue. And we see him be a ride or die from Luffy, you know, as soon as Luffy says, hey, you want to join my crew? And Zoro finally relents and says, okay. He's always a ride or die from that moment on. But I think that moment where he holds his sword in the sky, where he holds his sword in the air and makes that promise, that is the true kind of manifestation of his loyalty to Luffy. And that's what Zoro is constantly thinking about here. We've seen that loyalty on display from Zoro so many different times in the series. We've seen it I mean, when have we not seen it? But I mean, biggest moments, obviously Water 7 in his lobby, not just in his faith in Luffy, but in his loyalty to make everybody respect Luffy and to hold Luffy accountable as captain with the whole Usopp incident. We've seen it in Thriller Bark, where nothing happened. That was an immense display of his loyalty and his belief in Luffy, because in that moment he did put Luffy's dream ahead of his. We've seen that before in the Straw Hats. We've seen Straw Hats put their dreams on hold for Luffy, and that was Zoro's biggest one right there. And then we see it all the time. We see it all the time. And then here we see his loyalty again on full display, wanting to make Luffy king of the pirates. We do have his promise with Sanji when Sanji called him, and so he has that on his mind as well. But from that promise, they also decided, if we win this, we're gonna see what it looks like for Luffy to be king of the pirates. That's been on the forefront of their mind from the beginning, going into this fight. It's Luffy's dream on their mind. It's Luffy. And and then Zoro stepping up to King to beat the right hand man. And then Zoro being able to kind of have a moment where he figures things out for himself, where he's able to understand Enma, able to understand his swords, able to work with them and show the respect for them, and his swords chose him, so there's a level of respect these swords have for Zoro. To see that work together, to see his moments of clarity, to see what he's willing to become. He would become anything for Luffy's sake, to fulfill his promise, to keep his promise. He would do anything. And we see it in Thriller Bark, and we see it again here where he's like, yeah, I will be a king or whatever to keep my promise. I love it. I love it so much. It's so good. So good. I absolutely love and treasure the loyalty that Zoro has for Luffy. It is second to none, honestly. And there's a reason Zoro is vice captain of the Straw Hats. There's a reason he is Luffy's right-hand man, and we get to see that on full display here in this fight against King. The symbolism is amazing. I love to see these two clash against each other, their similarities, their differences, and then their determination to make their promises to their captains come true. And I love it. It is a wonderful fight, and I'm really proud of Zoro for winning. I didn't really have fear that he was gonna lose, but I'm really proud of Zoro for winning this fight, because it's more than just a simple, oh yes, they're both really tough, we got an epic fight scene out of it. There's so much more underneath with the symbolism and what this fight means, both on a grand scheme of things for Wano, but also for Zoro, his dream, and his loyalty. So that is all for this video. I hope y'all have enjoyed my analysis of this fight. This was a great fight. Like I said at the beginning, I don't talk about Zoro enough, and we should. I think a lot of other people do it for me. But Zoro is still an amazing character, and this was an amazing fight, an amazing moment for him. I'm so happy. I'm so happy we got this fight with King, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it in the anime, and I enjoyed it in the manga. And next week we'll be looking at another fight with Robin and Maria. That fight, because that one's another good one. I did Sanji versus Queen last week. If you haven't watched that video, please go check it out. I put a lot of work into these videos and analyzing the fights, so I would appreciate if y'all took the time to watch them. If y'all liked this video, let me know down below. If I missed something about this fight, or y'all just have a different viewpoint or have more thoughts on this fight, let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to chat with y'all about it. This Thursday on my channel, we're gonna be doing a theory video on Joy Boy. I'm so excited about that. That's why my brain is just geared for theories right now. But we're going to be doing a video on Joy Boy on Thursday, so please, please, please be on the lookout for that. That one's going to be a fun one. I have spent a lot of time working on that video, so I'd appreciate if y'all came and showed me some support on that one. Other than that, next week, again, I'll be doing Robin versus Maria, and then on next Thursday, I will be doing another Egghead review. Oda's really going off in Egghead. He's not holding back. But thank you all so much for watching this video. This one, it was a fun one to do. I really liked being able to analyze Zoro versus King and Zoro more as a character. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more like this from me in the future, let me know. I would love to do more focused videos on just taking either a scene or a fight from the manga and analyzing it a little bit more. If you want to see more of those from me, let me know down below. Other than that, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you next time, scholars.